In this video, I'm going to be reviewing MODO Drum from IK Multimedia. Hi folks, I'm Mike and I hope you're well. MODO Drum by IK Multimedia was a plugin which I hadn't actually tried yet, but I noticed it had gone down significantly in price since its release, so I thought I'd get hold of a copy and show it to you guys, and I have to say I'm super impressed. It uses technology which other drum plugins don't use, and that gives it some special capabilities. We'll be covering all of that later in the video, but let's get started by taking a look at the different kits. MODO Drum comes with 10 full kits. Now that's not surprising for a modern commercial drum plugin. However, the technology behind it already impacts upon this basic expectation, because some other major drum plugins use up to hundreds of gigabytes of resources which you need to download and then keep on your system. In contrast, MODO Drum's download size is 6.4 gigabytes. Now apart from the download size and the disk usage, this also impacts upon loading time. Just take a look as I switch from one kit to another. It loads very, very quickly indeed. And when it gets to the top of that progress bar that you can see there, when it gets to 100, the kit is completely ready to use, okay? So very, very fast download times. That's the first impact of the technology behind this drum plugin. Let's have a listen to this kind of default kit, I guess, here, which is the studio kit. So just a nice basic kit to get you going. Let's go to something a bit different, the Rock Custom Kit. Nice, and now something a little bit more retro, the Black Oyster. And a much bigger kit down here. We'll go all the way down here to Reference here, double kick drums and all that kind of jazz. Let's have a listen. And something really different right at the beginning here. This is called the Jazzy Kit. Now, I was a little bit surprised by this one. It's much sort of bigger than I expected. And as it sort of says in the description here, it's kind of designed for sort of bebop, a huge sounding kit. This one, let's have a listen. Okay, so these are really just starting points, these 10 different kits. It's really when you get into customizing them that you start to feel some of the flexibility of this plugin. Let's have a look at customization. So here we are in the Customize tab of MODO Drum. I've got the studio kit loaded up, and I'm going to show you a feature which is actually quite common with drum plugins. However, in the interest of completeness, I am going to cover it quickly for you now, but this is not really the killer feature at all. But with this particular tab, we can select drums and swap them out for other drums. So for example, I can click on this snare here, and then I'll see a selection of other snares. In fact, all of the snares from the other 9 kits apart from this one. So typically what I would be doing is playing something like this groove and then trying different snares until I get close to the one I want. So I'll play it like so. Maybe I think I want something a bit more shallow. Okay, or maybe something a bit deeper. Nice, grungy. So you can start to customize your kit in that way, and I'll very much be focused probably on the kick and the snare drums when I do this. So again, of course, I've clicked on the kick drum here and I've got a choice of different kick drums. I'll just swap one out here. And so on and so forth. You get the idea, but this means you can really start to create your own sound by selecting the different types of basic instruments within your kit, or the basic drums within your kit. However, it's the next feature, the ability to edit these elements, which is really the killer feature of MODO Drum. But first of all, I just want to discuss the technology behind MODO Drum so that you can understand why this feature is so unique. So virtual drums are triggered by MIDI, and MIDI has 128 levels of velocity, with velocity being how hard you press the key on your keyboard or how hard you hit the pad on a drum pad. Now, with one sample or recording of a drum, we can play it at different volumes depending on the velocity. The only problem with that is drums actually change the character of their sound depending on how hard they're hit. So a snare drum hit at a very low volume will have much more of the actual snare sound in it, and when it's played at a higher volume will have much more of the body of the drum sound in it compared to the snare. So the character of the sound changes as we hit it harder. So in order to reflect this accurately, what most plugins do is they have 128 different recordings for each velocity of the hit, and then we can accurately hear that drum at different velocities. Now, there's a problem that occurs when we have the same recording for each velocity. If we have, say, a velocity 100, the same recording being played each time, we can get this kind of machine gun effect, and it sounds really sort of mechanical and unnatural. And that's because we have natural variations in the sound of a drum. It's being hit in a slightly different place each time, that kind of thing. So we usually use a technique called round robin, where we have different recordings at the same velocity. So say, for example, you'd started off with those 128 samples, but you want to do 3 variations in all, then you're going to have 384 samples for that drum, just as a basis, and to have all of the velocities covered and have that slight variation. Now, that's all well and good, but what about when you want to change something about that drum, say the skin or the drum head? Then you're going to have to do another set for that variation, then creating 768 samples in all. So we're already starting to build up quite a lot. Then say let's have another change, like changing the drumsticks to different types of sticks. Then you're going to have to record 1,536 samples to accommodate all of those different variations. So you can see it very quickly starts to get out of control. So with regular drum plugins, although we do see these kinds of variations, they're somewhat limited, because if we allowed all of the many types of variations, we would have absolutely huge libraries and it would be kind of unmanageable. Now, MODO Drum, I should say, doesn't use samples so much. It does use them for the cymbals, but it doesn't use them for the drums. Instead, we have synthesized drums, modeled drums. So as you hit each drum, the sound is being created in the software itself, and it can take into account all kinds of variations about the drum. And we're going to see what all of those variations are. So MODO Drum really is able to do things that other drum libraries on the market cannot do at this moment. So with all of that in mind, here we are on the Customize tab, and I've clicked on this snare drum here like so, and I'll go ahead and click on Edit Element so we can edit that snare drum. And look at the choices available here. This is just so much fun in my opinion. So we've got the basic snare drum sound, which I selected like this. Let's go ahead and tune that snare drum. Let's make it higher pitched. Cool. Let's change the damping. Okay, so we'll just damp it. I'll do it completely so you can hear the difference. You hear there's a lot more ring when I have that down there. And then damped on. Just a really short sound. I can change things like the diameter also of the drum. That's going to change the pitch also. And the depth as well, okay? Imagine that for a regular sample library, you would have to have separate samples for each one of these many different choices, okay? So we're already into the thousands and thousands of different samples so far with what we've done. Let's go ahead. We can change, say, the type of the snare, so a large snare to a medium, and then the tension on that snare. Listen how fizzy it is down there with no tension. Okay, that may be something you want. So lots and lots of different options there. Now the options change depending on the drums that you've selected. So I'll go ahead and change from the snare here to the kick drum. You can see a completely different interface. Okay, now let's have a listen to changing the diameter on this shell. And the depth. Okay, so they're kind of, each individual one can be quite subtle, but when you combine them all together, you can really change the sound of these drums. Now, not only are you able to change the sound of the drum itself, but also the way that it interacts with other drums in the kit. So, for example, often when you kick on a kick drum, especially if it's loud enough, it'll actually affect the snare on the snare drum. It will make it buzz a little bit. So we've got a control for that here. Okay. So you're controlling the sort of the interactions of one drum to another. Very, very cool. And as I say, even for a small change like this, you know, you're going to have lots and lots of different samples to take that into account. So those are the variations that we can make on the drums. And as I say, if I was to go to the toms, again, we get a different interface again and different choices available to us depending on the drum. But we can also go ahead and change the sound of those drums further by adjusting the play style. So here I am adjusting the play style of the snare drum, and the first thing I want you to notice is we can affect things depending on which stick is actually hitting the drum. So we've got our left and our right drumsticks here. Now I'm going to look at the tips of the drumsticks first. I'll just play the left stick. And there's no real sort of stick sound in there, so I'll just put the volume of that up full. I probably wouldn't have it up that loud normally, just so you can hear it though. I've put it up to full. Have a listen. Can really hear the click of that stick there. Okay, so let's change to a different tip. We'll go from wood to nylon. Different sound again, not sort of so hollow sounding. And then we can go to no tip. So as I say, it's not something you would probably normally have up to full volume, but nice to have that little sort of click sound in there sometimes, depending on the song, of course, and the style of music. And you can make it different for each drumstick, or you can indeed lock them together so that you're making those changes to both sticks at the same time. Now, the other really interesting thing that you can do is change the area of the drum where each stick hits. So they're both hitting right in the center at the moment. Let's take that right stick there, and I'll just drag it right out to the edge, and I'll play you the right stick now. Compare that to the left stick. Yep, so you get some nice variation in hits there. Not only that, but in terms of variation, you can also increase the area of randomness, okay? So you're going to get a lot more sort of random fluctuations with each hit, even with the same stick, when you increase that area there. So really, really great. Now, that's just for the snare drum. Of course, you haven't got the same options available for the kick drum. When we go over to the kick drum here, you can see that the main thing that we can do is change whether the heel is up or down. So and then we can change the beta tip. Okay, so we'll go to from felt there to a plastic tip and then to a wooden tip. Just an incredible amount of things that you can do with each drum there. And I have to stress again, if this was a sample library, we're into just many, many thousands of different samples for each drum here to give these kinds of options. By the way, are you finding this video useful? If you are, go ahead and hit the like button for me. Do it right away so that you don't forget. Also, if you do like this kind of content, make sure you subscribe and ring the bell on YouTube so that you're notified about my other videos. Now, back to this video. So we can further affect the sound of our overall kit by choosing which room we place it in. So I've got the basic studio kit loaded up here, and it's in the mid studio room. I'm going to play that, and then I'm going to switch to some different rooms so you can hear the differences. Let's have a listen. Let's go to a booth. Let's try a large studio. Nice. And then a full-on venue. So lots and lots of basic variations in sound there. Now, of course, you want to kind of blend that in normally by going to the mixer, but rather conveniently, they've just given you a little glimpse into the mixer here by clicking on this little icon here. This just brings up the room section of the mixer here, so you don't have to switch between the two. So I'm just going to take that room out a little bit so we can get a nice mix there. So as I say, that's giving you a kind of a glimpse into the mixer, but let's take a look at the full mixer now. So we do have a really nice mixer with MODO Drum with all of the features you'd expect with a regular mixer, and as well as all of the different channels for the drums there. We also have an overhead and room channel, which we can see here. There's also some effects channels that we can use, and you can also add buses on the fly. I won't add them now, but you can add, I think, as many buses as you wish. Now, importantly, what I'd like to point out here is, as well as using this mixer and then going out to a stereo channel, just one single stereo channel on your DAW, you can also output each of these drums down here to a separate channel on your DAW. Now, I can't do it now because I'm actually using it in standalone mode, but I think it's really important for me that it does that. I've mentioned this many times before on the channel because my preferred method when I'm actually doing my final mix is have the faders available to me right away in my regular console within my DAW without having to go into the plugin. However, if you do wish to do the mixing in here and then just go out to a stereo bus, that's available. As I say, in standalone mode, this is really handy as well. Now, apart from all of that, we also get some really nice effects for each drum. And I think this is one of the handy features of the fact that MODO Drum is made by IK Multimedia, who make effects, and they have actually used some of those effects technology in the background here with this drum plugin. Even though the interfaces aren't there, I'm led to believe that they actually have the same background technology in terms of the actual effect itself. So I've chosen a compressor 76 there, and if I bring it up, you'll have the familiar controls that you'd expect with that kind of a compressor. If I was to bring up a compressor 2A, then we get that slight difference with the difference of controls. As I say, the interface isn't there, but all of the options are very, very handy indeed. Some sort of weird effects amongst them as well, but a lot of very, very handy effects, of course, leaning towards things that are useful for drums. So you also get a really nice selection of grooves to get you started, and I really appreciate the way that they've organized these into different genres. And then I like the categories of, intro, verse, chorus, fill, that kind of thing. So if I'm sort of looking for some consistency in my grooves when I go from one section of a song to another, I find that really handy. So let's look at some examples. We'll go to rock. These are sort of filters more than selections. So I'll go to rock. I'll select the verse let's go to intro first of all. So let's go for the intro of, I'm randomly picking here, blind intro. Have a listen. Okay, very, very cool. And then, of course, if you just wanted to select the verse from the similar sort of thing, then you could do that here and go down to where it says blind there for the verse. So probably handy if you do actually match up some of these grooves to the right style of kit, but I'll go ahead anyway, go to soul, select a chorus there. Let's go to bless chorus and have a listen there. So really handy for getting you started. You can, if you're in a DAW, then you can either sync to that DAW or you can just listen to these at their sort of originally intended BPM. And you can just grab these and then drag them out to the tracks on your DAW as well, just for really easy sort of compilation of a group of grooves to use in your song. So finally, we do have some mapping features as well, and I think they're really well thought out. You can change the key which plays each drum. So say, for example, I've got the snare selected here, and I could, if I wanted to, select a different key to trigger that drum. But where it gets kind of interesting for me is, again, where we have these differences with a right and left snare, for example, we can change the velocity curve of those different elements. So not only are we changing the sort of velocity curve based on each drum that we're selecting, but also each stick. So we could have a right hand which is sort of relatively weaker in hits, than the left hand, and that can sort of really help in terms of making things sound a little bit more authentic. So just, a straightforward feature, but I find that's very, very handy indeed. So never mind what I think, what do you think? Did you like the sound of these different drum kits? What do you feel about the different features? Are they something that you think you could make use of? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear about that. Check the links in the description for this product. Follow them to see how much it is in your part of the world. Now, while you're there, check out my link for patreon.com, where for as little as $1 per month, you can help me help you by making other videos like this. And I'll see you in the next video.